Today I want to do the start of linear equations, so the basics of linear equations. Alright, if we get straight into it and we look at our first example, we have y plus 4 equal to 7. So in order to solve a linear equation, you want to isolate the variable. Now what does isolate the variable mean? It means two things. You want the variable to be alone and you want the variable to be positive. Now it doesn't matter whether the variable is on the left hand side of the equal sign or the right hand side of the equal sign, so long as the variable is alone, all by itself, and the variable is positive. So it has nothing attached to it and it's positive. Alright, so if we look at this y plus 4 equals 7, we can see that something that's stopping the y from being by itself is the plus 4. So I want to get rid of the plus 4. Now in order to get rid of things, to isolate my variable, I'm going to do opposite operations. So if it is adding, I'm going to do the opposite of adding, which is subtracting. If it's multiplying, I'm going to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. Dividing, opposite multiplication, square rooting, opposite is squaring, etc. Alright, so I'm going to start by doing the opposite of plus 4, which is minus 4. But it's an equation, and an equation has to stay balanced, as in the left-hand side has to stay equal to the right-hand side. Imagine if it had hands like a weight, like a scale, all right? And if you do something to the one side, you're adding to it and it's going to get heavy, or you're subtracting from it and it's going to change. So in order to keep your hands the same, in order to keep your scale balanced, you have to do the same thing to both sides of the equal sign. So now if I had y plus 4 minus 4, that would mean that the plus 4 and the minus 4 would cancel. So we'd be left with y equal to 7 minus 4, which is 3. Alright, I have y minus 2 equal to 10. So if I look at this, I can see that I have a minus 2 stopping the y from being by itself. So to get rid of a minus 2, I'm going to do the opposite of minus 2, which is plus 2. I'm going to plus 2 to both sides. So now I've got y minus 2 plus 2. The 2's are going to cancel. I'm left with y equal to 10 plus 2, which is 12. Alright, if I have x plus 7 equal to negative 1. If I look at this, I can see that what's stopping my x from being alone is the plus 7. So that means I need to get rid of the plus 7. So how do I get rid of plus 7? I do the opposite of plus 7, and I'm going to subtract 7. But it's an equation, so what I do to the one side, I have to do to the other side as well. So I'm going to say minus 7 on the other side as well. So that the plus 7 and the minus 7 are going to cancel. What I'm going to be left with on the left-hand side is x equal to, now I have minus 1 minus 7. Now just be careful, because that's a negative, that's getting more negative. We're not multiplying them together to make a positive. So if I have minus 1 minus 7, it's minus 1 getting more negative, which is minus 8. Alright, if I have 2x equal to 50, now I have a coefficient. So I have a coefficient stopping my x from being alone. Now what's happening between that 2 and that x? There's actually a secret multiplication sign between that 2 and that x. So between the 2 and the x, it's actually 2 times x. So in order to isolate that variable, I want to do the opposite operation. And what's the opposite of multiplication? It's division. So I'm going to divide by 2, but it's an equation. So what I do to the one side, I'm going to do to the other side as well. So 2x divided by 2, the 2's are going to cancel. I'm going to be left with an x equal to 50 divided by 2 is 25. Alright, if I have negative 3x equal to 21, now there's a negative sign as well. But what's stopping that x from being alone? The negative 3 is stopping the x from being alone. What's happening between that negative 3 and that x is actually multiplication. In order to get rid of the negative 3 being multiplied with the x, I'm going to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So I'm going to divide, but I'm not just going to divide by 3, because if I divide it by 3, then I'm going to have a negative x on my left-hand side, and I don't want a negative x on my left-hand side. So instead of just dividing by 3, I'm going to divide by negative 3. What I do to the one side, I'm going to do to the other side. So now I have negative 3x divided by negative 3. So that's going to leave me with just an x equal to, and now I have 21 divided by negative 3. Now what kind of 21 do I have? I have a positive 21. So a positive 21 divided by negative 3 is a negative 7. Alright, now I have x over 2 equal to 7. X over 2. X divided by 2. So this divided by 2 is stopping my x from being alone. Now what's the opposite of divide? Times. So I'm going to times by 2 because then x divided by 2 times 2 is going to cancel and I'm just going to be left with x. But it's an equation and what I do to the one side I'm going to do to the other side. So x divided by 2 times 2 is just going to leave me with x equal to 7 times 2 is 14. Alright, now I have y divided by 3 equal to 11. So if I have y divided by 3, that means that I want to get rid of this divided by 3. And how do I get rid of divided by 3? I do the opposite of divide, which is times. Now if I times the left-hand side by 3, I need to times the right-hand side by 3 as well. So y divided by 3 times 3 gives me y equal to 11 times 3 is 33. Now what happens if I have a coefficient and a constant? So I have two things stopping my variable from being alone. I'm going to isolate it step by step. So I'm going to first get rid of the constant. So I'm going to start by getting rid of this plus 1. So to get rid of the plus 1, I'm going to subtract 1 because plus 1 minus 1 is going to give me 0. But what I do to the one side, I do to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 1 from the other side as well. So on the left hand side I have this plus 1 minus 1. So those are going to cancel. So I'd be left with 2x equal to 11 minus 1 is 10. But now I can see that there's a 2 stopping my x from being alone. What's happening between that 2 and that x? Multiplication. What's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides. 2x divided by 2 leaves me with x equal to 10 divided by 2, which is 5. Alright, if I have 3x minus 4 equal to 8, there are two things stopping my x from being alone. The coefficient of 3 and the constant of negative 4. So I'm going to start by getting rid of the negative 4. So I'm going to get rid of it by doing the opposite, which is adding 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. If I add 4 to the left hand side, I'll be left with 3x equal to 8 plus 4, which is 12. Now I want to get rid of the coefficient of 3. So I want to get rid of that 3 times x. And the opposite of times is divide. So I'm going to divide by that coefficient of 3. What I do to the one side, I'm going to do to the other side. So 3x divided by 3 is just x equal to 12 divided by 3, which is 4. Alright, last example. Now I have x over 2 plus 7 equal to 3. So I'm going to start by getting rid of the plus 7. And how do I get rid of the plus 7? I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides because it's an equation. When I subtract 7 from the left hand side, I will be left with x divided by 2 equal to, and then on the right hand side I'm also going to subtract the 7. So I'm going to say 3 minus 7, which is negative 4. So now what I can do is I can get rid of this divided by 2 by multiplying by 2. But remember it's an equation, so what I do to the one side, I'm going to do to both sides. So when I have x divided by 2 and I multiply it by 2, then I'm just left with the x on the left hand side equal to, on the right hand side I have a negative 4. Now remember, a negative 4 times a positive 2 is a negative 8. Alright, and now that's the basics of equations. So now you can just build from here. Remember, the more you do, the better you'll be. See you soon.